Blog Talk Radio.
Hi, and welcome to our show. This is MindShifters Radio with the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce. And we have had ongoing conversation about codependency and power people, and I think we're going to continue with that conversation, at least for part of today's show. The call-in number is 646-200-4169. And the chat room is open, and I also have my email open. If you're a guest in the chat room and you can't write into the chat itself, you can email me at Jeannie@whyagain.com. That's JEANIE at WHYAGAIN.com. And here's Dr. Michael Ryce.
Welcome to our show. Dr. Tim, how are you this morning? Hello, Dr. Tim. Well, David, are you there? Let's see if we've got the whole crew. Can you hear there? Well, good morning. I'm not getting a response from Dr. Tim or from David.
Michael?
And, there we are. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing fine. I had my phone muted and didn't know it.
Okay. I know. I've done that one. And we got the whole family today. Terry's here. David's here. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you all this morning?
Doing fabulous. Just had a wonderful call a few moments ago from my brother Terry in Louisville, Kentucky, and he was working on his first worksheet. And he started on it last night and had a lot of issues and things that just came up for him, and he gave me a call, and he just went through it, and he got it. And it's what he said, I got it, I understand it. Very first one. So it was a nice little thing. I just hung up with him about 2 minutes ago. So,
well, that's pretty awesome, and it is. I'm really seeing such a shift in the energy, and I don't know, it sounds like for you, Terry, David, that's the experience, and I love Dr. Tim's thoughts on it, but what I'm seeing is such an acceleration in people being able to understand the work and following through and doing the work. It was interesting. We had a meeting. I've spoken several times about Dr. Stephen Andraki, who's the physician who had us train 20 of his medical assistants in the forgiveness process. And when we completed that training, we went off to Florida, and a couple of weeks later had a call saying, hey, how about getting back here and let's take this to the next level. And we were interacting last night. Both he and his wife came to our Circle of Life workshop last night. And it was a small group, Pahrumph's a town of about maybe 30,000 or so people. And we're working with 25, 30 people. And out of those 25 or 30, when I asked how many have done their 5 worksheets, 2 or 3 people put up their hand. And how many have done 4? Another couple. How many have done 3, 2? And out of that group, we're seeing so many more people who are actually doing the work. And then there's a young man who's a medical assistant here who we did a support group every the first and third Thursday here in Pahrump at Health Partners Medical Center. There's a support group that Dr. Andraki and his wife have been running, Claudia. And it's awesome to see these patients who are coming in and learning forgiveness and starting to take responsibility for and do their own healing work. And there was one young man who was at the group 2 weeks ago, and he had a broken foot. He's a medical assistant. He had a broken foot, so he's in a cast. And as we started to talk about forgiveness, he literally got up and ran out of the room. Last week he showed up for the support group of his own volition. Dr. Andraki had been talking with him about, you got to get involved. You've got to start to do your work. And so he came last Thursday, and we worked. There were actually just a couple of people here. We worked with him through a worksheet, and the next time that Dr. Andraki came into the office, which was 2 days later, this young man had done 28 worksheets. And he shared with us, he came to the workshop last night, and afterward we went out to eat, and he shared with us that one of his issues had always been the beggars on the street corner. The guy with the sign is, obviously capable of work, but doesn't and just collects money from people. And when he did a worksheet around that, what he realized was that he had a lot of shame for turning away from these people, and he worked through that shame. The next day, this guy comes up and he's like, I want money. What would you want it for? I want a drink. He said, well, I'm not gonna give you money for a drink, but if you'd like, I'll take you to eat. So he took this guy who was standing on the street corner for some food, and he sat down with him, and he did a worksheet with him. And, it's just so awesome to watch how the critical mass is moving, It's just awesome. And when we talked to this guy last night, he's talking about, he showed his dad how to do them. He's doing worksheets. He said, now I'm sure it's, it's an exaggeration because he didn't have an exact number. He said, and this is in a week. He said, I've done 1,000 worksheets. And he just went through a litany of issue after issue after issue. This guy is 22 years of age. And he's going through issue after issue after issue, doing forgiveness work around it, and just getting these insights and this clarity. It was just awesome.
Yeah. So that is a wonderful story, and I get it what you mean by being a part of that. I can just see you visualize. I can just visualize you being with him and hearing his story. It's very powerful, and that really is what it's all about. It's about staying with it and being consistent with him and having the support. It's great that the doctor would support him and that you would support him in a way that to encourage him and to just stay with it. If you stay with it, it will.
Absolutely.
Really yep.
Tim, what's your experience up there in Chicago? Are you seeing any shift in the way people are taking to the tools and putting them to work in their lives?
Well, I think that it's the same kind of thing you're seeing. I would say that we're having more people. We had somebody come up with the idea of doing a spiral-bound workbook for the reality management worksheets, including some explanatory material, and then he brought 20 of them to the group to give out. And I've given them all out now. And more than I've ever seen before, I'm seeing people show up either in my office or at support group with that book. And they'll open the book and they'll go to a worksheet they've done recently and they'll ask me questions about it. So, yes, I'm seeing a dramatic improvement or increase in the number of people who are actually doing the worksheet process.
Yes. Yeah, it's awesome. And I met with Dr. Andraki this morning. We're actually staying at his house. He's hosting us while we're out here in Pahrump. They live in this awesome spot in the desert, about just over the California line, about an hour and a quarter or so from Las Vegas. And he's turning this desert into these lush gardens, growing this awesome food, actually freely supplying restaurants in Las Vegas with these freshly grown organic vegetables and things. It's just awesome to see what he's doing. But we were meeting and chatting this morning and talking about how we could take this to the medical community, and it looks like we're probably going to design a program for medical malpractice to give physicians the skills, support them in the communication skills and the support of healing and such. And out of that conversation this morning, Dr. Andraki, just before he left and just before we left to come to town so we could do this show, he asked if I'd be interested in doing a co-hosted show next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, mark your calendar, at 11 till 12 o'clock, Dr. Stephen Andraki and myself will be doing a co-hosted show, and he wants to talk about medicine and how people can approach their physicians. One of the things he was saying to me this morning was, I've been practicing medicine, I think somewhere around 30 years or so. And he said, I've seen tens of thousands of patients. He said, I've never had one patient that's come into my office and said, Doctor, can you help me heal? It's like, and his take was, nobody wants to be responsible for their health. He said the most common thing that people say when they come into my office is, tell me what's wrong, rather than tell me what's right and how can I heal. And so here's this physician who is training his medical assistants and his staff to work with people with forgiveness worksheet processes. And in so doing, inviting people to take responsibility for and actually heal themselves, heal their lives, heal what's going on in their lives. So it's pretty awesome, and next week's show should be, I think, extremely powerful in terms of looking at the forgiveness process in the context of medicine and where it belongs, and that's what we're cooperatively working on, aside from creating a process here in Pahrump to measure the effect of introducing forgiveness to a whole community. So that's one of the things that we are working on, is developing that and creating a research project. And Dr. Tim, I need to talk with you about that, because you may have some ideas for us and or maybe somehow be able to support the happening here. But we've got a small community, about 30,000 people. It's kind of a relatively down-and-out community, pretty tough place. And we have inroads, of course, through the largest medical center in town, where Dr. Andraki works, and the medical director is on board. He did an intensive with us last week here in Arizona, or over in California. We did one at Tacoma Hot Springs. And he has been getting books and sending DVDs to friends. It's like, folks, we need to start being responsible and heal. I mean, it's just awesome. So we've got an inroad into the therapeutic community here, and perhaps the drug court. We talked with the judge of the drug court, and we're looking at setting up a research project, and perhaps for Jeannie, a master's thesis on the impact of bringing true forgiveness into a community, measuring all community stats, prison, health statistics, abuse statistics, child abuse, spousal abuse, criminal activity, and showing what can happen when you bring forgiveness into a whole community. So it's pretty exciting to see what's happening here, and
that is very exciting, Michael. Very.
Yes, definitely.
And if I might add, one of the things that keeping in mind with this is that when I heard you say that most people that come into the doctor's office, how they approach them, I think that the reason that it is approached in that way is because that the culture has just been taught, that has been shown. I don't think they get it, that they know that there is another way. Especially to speak to a physician about this. The movie that I was telling you about that I watched, Temple Grande, was about an autistic girl, and her mother took her to the doctor when she was 4 years old, and the doctor said, well, this is, and she said, well, what do you mean? Surely she'll grow out of this. He said, no, she's autistic. She said, well, what can I do? He said, well, we recommend institutionalization. And it was like, she said, what do you mean? What does that mean? And he said, well, perhaps your husband should come in here. And she said, I'm a Harvard graduate. You can talk to me. And it was like he shifted totally with the way that he was approaching it. And I think that there is this mindset that, unless people have an understanding within the approach that they have, is pretty much, resolved to whatever it is that the doctor, the quote, position of authority is going to say.
Right.
And anyway, to go on to tell you that I told you about that movie, it's just an absolutely incredible movie where this woman, she's written down, and I'm talking about the child that had autism, has written several books and speaks to groups and doctors and people about it. She went on to get her BA or an MA, and I mean, she's just done some incredible things. So I think it's, when enough people will get the approach and get the understanding that there is an alternative, there is another way, then it will accelerate. And I think that that's that's my experience of what's going on. Is that
absolutely
enough people will be patient. Will be patient with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had a woman who showed up at the workshop on Monday night, had come in to see Dr. Andraki on Monday afternoon, and basically everything was wrong in her life. Everybody was wrong in her life, and she was a victim to it all. And so Dr. Andraki invited her to come to the workshop on Monday night. And Monday night she came in, and about 10 minutes into the workshop, she said, "Am I in the right place? I think I'm in the wrong place here." And so we asked her where she was supposed to be, and no, this is the place. And she just had this kind of hard edge. And by the end of the evening, she had softened, came forward, someone who's living in poverty, living in with some health challenges, and no driver's license, no identification to get a driver's. I mean, just on and on goes the litany. And by the time she left last night, she came over in a really soft and open way and gave me a hug and said thank you. And when she saw Dr. Andraki yesterday, they were her words, where nobody ever told me there was another way. This one's probably, 60-ish, 65 maybe, and estranged from a daughter, and Dr. Andraki, and that's part of her medical condition. And Dr. Andraki gave her some suggestions and assistance in how to start writing a responsibility communication letter to her daughter to reopen that relationship. And we're just watching. I mean, this is just in 2 days, this woman start to blossom. And yesterday in her appointment with Dr. Andraki, she said, I just didn't know there was another way. Nobody ever told me. And it's like, this is what the churches should have been doing from day one. This is what it was all about. It's the actual work of Yeshua. And sadly, if you look into in the 3rd century, there was a convening of I'm not even sure what word to use. The church has words for it, but a restriction convention that we're going to lock in what these teachings mean. And out of that convention came a thing called the Apostles' Creed. And when you read through the Apostles' Creed, what you'll read is ideas of phenomenology, and the life of Yeshua and his teaching has disappeared. And this was, to me, yesterday was just like an expression of that, how that had been disappeared, that teaching. And so you read in the Apostles' Creed, was born of the Virgin Mary, and then there's a comma, suffered and died under Pontius Pilate. And you look at that, and what did this convention do? It compressed the whole life and absolutely awesome, practical, life-affirming teachings of the man named Yeshua into a comma. His life has disappeared. His teachings disappeared. And at that point, I think, by and large, the church abdicated its responsibility to deliver the life-affirming, life-strengthening teachings of the man named Yeshua, and in particular, the forgiveness process. And if there's anybody that's new to the show today, we invite you to go to our website, which is www.whyagain.com. On the right-hand side, there's a link that says Download Worksheets. If you click on that link, there's a whole list of different worksheets that we've developed, but the first 2 links, the first one is the explanation of the forgiveness process from the Aramaic, which is the exact opposite of I'm going to let you off the hook for what's happening inside of me, but rather is about how I go inside myself and collapse the disease energies that I've developed over my lifetime and through my generations. And then the second link is the actual worksheet. So we invite you to download those 2, start to put the pen to the paper. That's what we were talking about earlier with the worksheet process, and put it to work in your life and watch what happens. It's absolutely amazing and awesome to see how it unfolds. Tim, any miracles to share from your perspective these days? Any shifts that kind of tap into the conversation we're having at this point?
Well, I think my biggest one was on Sunday. I had a day planned where I was going to be helping several different people, my son, my mother, and my sister, and it was all set up to be done so that we could go to an early dinner at 4:30, so then this other stuff could happen. And about 12:30, enough things had gone, quote, wrong, unquote, that it was clear that the 4:30 dinner wasn't going to happen.
Right.
And I felt myself standing in my sister's garage doing this work, feeling this frustration, uncomfortable energy coming up in me. And I was able to just reset the love filters and mentally do a quick worksheet and realize, all of this stress and tension in me is because I'm holding on to the idea that something and something and something has to happen by 4:30, and there's just not enough time to have all that happen. And my son was standing next to me, and he said, "Dad, you look like you should be doing some tapping." And I said, "Well, you're right. I probably should be doing some tapping."
Lead them.
And he said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Well, it's clear. I have all this idea that we're going to go to dinner at 4:30, and that's just not going to happen, so I have to let go of that." And so we had a little chuckle, and then about 8 more things went wrong, and we chuckled each time the rest of those things went wrong, and that kind of thing couldn't have happened in my life 5 years ago, and it wouldn't have happened as smoothly even 2 years ago.
Right.
So,
and maybe the truth is nothing went wrong.
Yeah,
maybe the truth is the whole thing was a setup so that Dad could learn to forgive his frustration over the world not running the way he wants it to run.
Well, and the other thing is that, the thing that comes up for me as I continue to work on this and do the worksheets is this is all about undoing the conditioning that I had all my years with my father, who, when those things would happen, he wouldn't get, furious with people. He would get furious with things, and he would use swear words and slam tools on the floor, and when these inanimate objects wouldn't perform the way he wanted to, I would be witness to these little mini upsets that would go on and get bigger and bigger. And
right.
I'm undoing my conditioning for that and training myself that there's a whole different way to be in that moment.
Right. Forgiveness. It's awesome. Well, my dad would have hit somebody, and it probably would have been me. Terry, what would your dad have done in a situation like that? Okay, Terry, just 1 second. Jean's just cranking up. There you are.
Hello.
So what would your dad have done in a situation like that, Terry?
Well, first of all, he wouldn't have been there.
Okay.
So that would have involved way too much family interaction and ability to be present in that type of an environment.
So he would have just evaporated himself.
Yeah, he was already gone for any type of interaction at that level. Been created to step into this, just the initial pieces of being in a family and having children was enough to trigger the pain in him that, my answer is, I'm out of here,
Right. And David, what would your dad have done in a situation like that?
He would have been. He would have just acted out in a violent way, and maybe been sarcastic or been threatening to anyone that was available. And that was usually his way of handling most things when things didn't go right. And I like to offer my appreciation to Tim for holding that space and modeling it for his son. Because I think I agree with you, Michael. I was getting ready to chime in at the same time. Wow, Tim, look at this wonderful opportunity. Nothing went wrong. Everything actually went perfectly, that you set it up in your world for you to be able to do such a fabulous act of showing what forgiveness is on an experiential level as a model to your son and anyone else that was around. And to me, that's the key to it. Those are the things that are going to make a a major shift in people catching on to it and getting it. So congratulations, Tim.
Thank you.
And also to have so modeled for your son the process of healing, that when you get lost in your stuff, as we all do from time to time, that your son's the one who's there to remind you and take you back on a healing path. I mean, that's just so awesome. And what a shift. I mean, look at the four of us in one generation, the shift that's happened, the shift that's taken place. And that's what's growing into critical mass on the planet. And one of the things, the context of our conversation at this point, because the last, I think, 4 days now we've been talking about codependence, is that we've talked about the behaviors that were learned in interaction with the power person, and that there are basically only 3 behaviors possible when we're functioning out of the power person dynamic. And that is that when there's no stress, we'll do what we did to get along with our power person. When stress starts to build, we'll do whatever we did to resist and survive with our power person. And when we become ultra-stressed, we'll do whatever our power person did that we hated the most, that they did to us. And so notice the inclination that comes forward in those circumstances, and that the movement from codependence to interdependence is to be able to create relationships like you've created with your son. What an awesome interdependent relationship to have a son there, that when you're caught in your power person dynamic, and I suspect that, and in fact you probably don't really need to say much about it, but you'd certainly be welcome to, that in the situation where things weren't going the way Dad would, it was the whole dynamic that was going on for you, and that you have an interdependent, and this is the whole idea of interdependent relationship, shifting out of codependence. The 4 of us probably would have, in that situation with Dad starting, his frustration levels obviously rising, there's some upset coming up, we would have been ducking and getting the hell out of the way. And your son went, gee, Dad, time to do some healing, right? That's the shift from codependence to interdependence. That's the whole bottom line of what we're talking about, and that we can change those dynamics. So that's really just so awesome, Jim.
Well, it's an absolute gift, as Terry shared a few weeks ago, that with his kids, he can tell you how amazing it is and what a gift it is that when you give and you stay open to it, then you can receive back, and to have one of your children tell you, maybe it's time to use the techniques that you showed me. It's a beautiful thing.
Cool. Well, we've got a caller, so let's bring our caller on, Jeannie.
Okay, and I want to read one comment out of the chat room, and it's Sam, and she's also making a big shift in just one generation. And she said hers would have complained and moaned and said, if it was raining $100 bills, I'd be caught with a pair of gloving boxes on, hence my willing with a pair of boxing gloves on, hence my will being my weakest trait. So we hold you, Sam. You're doing an awesome job. And 607, you are on the air.
Hey, guys, it's Richard. How's everybody doing?
Hello, 607. How do you be?
Pretty good. How are you guys? This is Richard.
We're blessed and highly favored.
There you go.
Hey, Richard.
I just wanted to comment on when I was listening to the guy say that, he just sort of like mentally went through his worksheets. I caught myself doing that this morning. It's been, 3 weeks now since I've basically committed to doing one worksheet a day. And the value in doing the worksheets on a regular basis is that it becomes a habit then to, even if you aren't doing the worksheet, when you catch yourself in a thought pattern, and then all of a sudden you can say, oh, I just need to run through my worksheet mentally, and you can clear it without even having to do the worksheet. I caught that person saying that's what he did, is he realized that all he had to do was mentally just run through his worksheet, and that's the value and beauty of committing to doing it on a regular basis. It becomes a habit, and once it becomes a habit, then you can do it mentally without having a worksheet in front of you.
Absolutely, and we do still suggest that when you come across major issues that you do put the pen to the paper and do the written worksheet, because it seems there's something about bringing the physical motion of the hand in and the part of the brain it accesses that takes it to another level. But yeah, as you start to train your brain, click, 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 and for those who might be new to the work again, the whole idea is that one of the basic principles of this work is that if your mind is presenting you a reality, a picture of a scene, and there's some form of hostility or fear that goes along with it, your mind is using corrupt data, and you're living in a stressful situation and in a turmoil that's not necessary, that is removable. And the process of forgiveness is how you go inside yourself, collapse what's based in hostility or fear, and get back to a mind that's powered by love. And in every situation, no matter how, stressful, painful, terrible the situation might be, you can always come to it with the most intelligent mind possible, and that is that of love. But you can't do it without forgiveness. You can say, I want to be loving here, but if a situation shows up that resonates a dissociated part of your mind, that dissociated part of your mind will take over your behavior and run your life. And what the forgiveness process does is it collapses the dissociated mind so that you can come back to the places that are in need of healing, and you can totally and completely change the dynamics of what's going on inside of you. And so what we're here to do is to support you, each and every one of you, and of course in supporting you, we're supporting ourselves, because we're all in this boat together and learning the process of forgiveness, learning how to remove what never belonged in human physiology in the first place, and that is any form of hostility or fear. So, awesome work, gentlemen.
Thank you. And, it's really interesting, Michael, as I'm listening, that I wonder how many times anyone has ever listened to a talk show where there have been 4, 5, 6 men that would have this type of conversation and this in-depth of conversation of honesty and willingness. And I think that it's just really, really phenomenal that the group is willing to hold that space and, to teach men about manhood coming from the spiritual aspect of it versus coming from the carbon-based memory or from the program of past generations.
Yeah, macho manhood is the key to death. The macho man that's always, in control and always pushing the envelope and in their hostility and on and on and on it goes, is how people end up with heart attacks by the age of 40 and destroying themselves and destroying everything around them, their family systems, their children's lives, who just play out those dynamics. And that real manhood is real power, and what it has is the presence of love and respect and support, which is a pretty awesome thing to have in your life if you are a human being. And even rarer, if you look at and where do I base the idea that this macho stuff is the key to death? Well, if you look at the statistics, the average male dies 10 years earlier than the average female. And I'd offer the reason for that is because we're taught to spend so much time in hostility and fear, being the tough guy and all of that garbage, which is nothing but garbage. And so we're looking to be restored from our power person dynamics. You go back all the way to the ancient scriptures, and it says, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours is but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. And the fact that we sit here as 4 men who are on the phone, 5 now with Richard being there, who've changed the dynamics of their power person, of their, we're no longer living by the lives of the fathers. Not that those inclinations don't still come up, because they do for all of us. And that's where the forgiveness work comes in. When they said to Yeshua, well, how many of these darn worksheets do we have to do anyway? Is 7 enough? And in Aramaic, what he said was, no, 77 times 70. In other words, you're going to work through at depth those issues each time you forgive, and to clean up the whole inherited bloodline of hostility and fear may take 70 times 77 worksheets. Literally, it's a metaphorical number. It really means an infinite number till you're complete with that issue. And so to take this technology, and, we invite everybody who's part of our show today to invite somebody else to come and be part of this conversation, to call in. By the way, our call-in number is area code 646-200-4169. If you have a question or a thought. And we do have someone who has a question on the line. Jeannie?
Area code 786. You're on the air.
Hello, 786. Give us a name and where are you from?
Hi, Michael. This is Dayu from Miami. How are you doing?
Hello, Dayu. I am absolutely blessed. How about you?
I'm doing good, thanks, but I'm facing a challenge, so I thought I'd call in.
How can we support you?
Well, it's somebody who I had spoken to, who's also done this work, had wanted to do some of my work with me, and I said, yes, I do sessions, in this kind of work, without going into details about what it is or who it was. And then I realized I get my energy doesn't function around this other person. So I felt that her energy is very negative, and it's very hard for me to maintain my balance around her also. Her energy is very scattered. And also when she wanted me to do applied kinesiology on the phone long distance, which I do, but in order to do that, certain things have to be in place, like the circuits have to be balanced and all of that. And I just didn't think that would be feasible with this person. It wasn't a match. So I wrote to her and I said that I connected with our higher selves, and this is what came up was that this is not a match at this time. And she was very upset and wrote back to say, well, why don't you just, how did you have my permission to speak to my higher self? How come I can't hear it? And, you're a little too new agey for me anyway, but really, Jesus, why don't you just come out and say you don't want to do this? So it was.
Hold on for a second. We're going a little too fast. We're running by the core issues, and I want to back you up a little bit.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Let's go back to the place where the codependence started in the conversation, and I'd offer that the codependence started when you said she did this and made me unbalanced.
Okay.
And so my offering would be that statement becomes a statement of codependence, and a statement of interdependence would be, as I saw what I perceived to be her scattered energy,
yes,
I realized that brought up imbalance in me, threw me off, I went off balance. And so the core of your work around this, because what tends to happen when we go into some form of upset and we live in codependence is we say, or we may not even say I have upset, we'll say they upset me, and then go on and talk about them.
Right.
I heard early in your conversation,
okay,
and then as soon as you said that, everything else was about her.
Right.
And, you might, if I remember correctly, I think you got a copy of the DVD communication. Did you hear what I think I said?
I may have. I'll have to get them. I got quite a few of them, yeah.
If you got that one, I'd suggest this would be a perfect place to watch that, because the minute that you said, and I went into an imbalance, however it was exactly that you said that would be the place to now make the conversation about you. What is my imbalance? She can't
I
imbalance.
can't hack her negative energy. I basically can't hack it. I can't work around that. All I wanted to say was it's not a match to work together.
Take a breath. So I'm just going to invite you to notice once again the conversation becomes about her, and what I'm inviting you to do is to step back and look at you.
No, I didn't. I made a statement saying I cannot work around her energy. It's a statement about me. It's not about her. It's when I'm around her energy, I can't function. I can't muscle test. So I can't do what she's asking me to do around her.
Okay. So now if we're going to move into a healing conversation,
okay,
what I'm going to ask you to do is once again back up a little bit.
Okay.
And let go of the conversation about her and recognize that whatever her energy is about, scattered, whatever it happens to be, brings up, or negative, brings up a similar energy in you. When I try to take you back to there, what I perceive is your stress goes up a little bit.
Okay.
Your voice tone goes up a little bit.
Okay.
And there's maybe a hint of hostility in it.
Well,
and
I must test it to see where it went to. It went to a feeling of being trapped when I was 3 years old, when I first was shipped to stay with my parents, moved from my grandparents. And my dad used to have a lot of hostility and anger. And it was like I couldn't get away from it. So it's fear of anger, fear of hostility, because now she's upset with me because she thought the session was going to be free, and I'm trying to get out of giving her a free session. And it was never meant to be free to begin with,
Okay. Let's stop talking about her. Let's stay with Dayu.
Okay.
To talk about her is to move to codependence.
Okay.
To talk about Dayu, okay, so now you're back to one of your core power person issues.
Right. Yeah, well, when you mentioned that at the beginning of this talk show, I realized that the power person here is like feeling of being trapped with my dad. Yes, it is.
So then what it looks like what you want to do with her is cut her off.
Yes.
Okay. So now what I would offer is, knowing how codependence works, and remember we said one of the behavior dynamics is when the stress, and I acknowledge you for your willingness to go here, and I'm doing this with you. I may not do this with other people who might call in, but we've worked together, so I know your willingness level, and I acknowledge you for that. But without you saying any more about your power person, here you are in a situation where the stress is up, and when the stress goes up, we go into the behavior that our power person did to us that we hated the most. How did you feel when your power person cut you off, when your father cut you off?
Well, it was like it was all about him, and there was no room for anybody else. There was no listening. There was nobody. There was no space to even say where you were coming from, and you just had to. You couldn't even leave. You just had to sit and listen. You had to please the parent.
Right. So, Dayu, did you notice how many times I had to go, stop, hold it?
No, I didn't hear you at all. I only heard. I did not hear your end of the conversation even once. Something may have gone off because I just walked to check if I have the communication DVD, and while I was walking back, I didn't hear you say hold it or anything like that.
Oh. Okay.
I literally did not hear anything because the connection may have disconnected. I'm not sure.
Right. And the connection may have disconnected, or it may be that there was a block in not wanting to hear, and maybe that's what your dad used to do when you would say, hey, what about what I've got to say? Can't I speak here?
Yeah.
And Dad would just bowl over you. And my input to you would be, from where I sit, is it felt like just being bowled over. No, I'm going to keep talking. I've got my say. I'm going to speak whether you like it or not.
Yes, I understand. But we may have been dealing with a technicality. We
may be.
Technical problem, because I just walked, because you'd asked me earlier to see if I had that DVD, and I went to see if I did. And
sure.
I'm now back in the same place where we were originally getting good reception. So, yeah, you're right. It may have felt like that to you because it may have sounded like I wasn't hearing what you were saying, but there was a very likely chance that there was actually nothing coming through.
So then the question I would ask once again is, when your power person cut you off, how did it feel? You told me what went on in your mind, your thoughts, but when your power person cut you off and wouldn't let you speak, how did it feel?
Well, you feel trapped.
Trapped, okay. And and of course, feeling trapped really isn't a feeling, that's a thought. I think I'm trapped, and about being trapped, I feel. Well,
you just want to run away,
Okay, so that's a desire. I want to run away, and I'm staying with this point because notice that you've moved into your head around this issue. And by moving into your head, you're talking about all your thoughts and the things you wanted to do, but about, I don't know how many times.
I guess if the feeling was in question, it may be anger or resentment, perhaps.
Okay.
Anger or resentment.
So you'd really get into resentment when Dad would do that to you.
Well, it wasn't just about his anger. We were subjected, like if he thought we had done something wrong, which is very arbitrary, it was based on his mood or whatever, then we would get a slap, and it was just kind of pussyfooting around him to see what kind of mood he was in or whatever, So it was unfair. It was, I guess the resentment was a feeling of unfairness.
Right. So then my invitation to you would be that before you go any further in your conversation with this potential client, that what you might want to do is some worksheets around being treated unfairly, and around so that would be maybe a worksheet on Dad treating you unfairly, maybe do a couple of worksheets on Dayu with you as the subject of the worksheet, and being angry and resentful, because they're the realities that are coming up that cloud your vision. And knowing that you're a powerful healer and that you really want to become a master, what I know is you're going to have to work through these issues to be the master you want to be, so that any client could come in any condition they wanted to, and you would be so centered and connected to love that there's nothing in you that's off balance to be triggered by that client. And, of course, in that space, you could still say, thanks, but I'm going to pass on working with you. But the imbalance is an internal condition that's healable and forgivable. And as you forgive it as a healer, it will take you to the next level of mastery of your craft.
Okay. You said to do a statement with myself as the subject on anger and resentment?
Yeah, I would do a variety of worksheets, and the worksheets would look like Dayu, and Dad wouldn't let me speak, and would just, it had to be his way, and then my feelings, I felt resentful. Another worksheet would be I felt angry. Another worksheet might be I felt helpless or off balance. That this had brought up feelings in me of being off balance. And each of those worksheets would produce different results in you going inside of you and going back to that 3-year-old and throwing off the energies that are left over from that experience, so that you can stand in a posture of total centeredness, whatever somebody delivers to you.
Okay. But in the meantime, what do I write to this person? That I'm being triggered myself, and so it's not possible at this time for me to work with you?
That might be a way to go, or you might do something like, what I found was that when you approached me, it really brought some things up for me, and I'd like your support in healing them. Would you hold the space? And
well, at this time, I'm not in a space to even connect with her, and, I just need the space to do my worksheets, Yeah.
Well, and you don't need to connect with her directly. She doesn't need to be there to hold the space, but just an invitation for her to be holding the space. Whether, it doesn't mean you need to be on the phone with her or something doing the worksheet, but just an invitation to send the energy of support for the healing of whatever that dynamic is between the two of you.
That sentence down, it was something I'm not used to saying. So the first one, I'm being triggered when you, what exactly did you say? That was a nice invitation. I'd like to be able to say it, but when
you approached me to do some work, the way that I perceived your approach brought some imbalance up in me.
Okay,
some resentment.
Your approach brought some imbalance in me. Okay.
Up in me. And I realize I have some resentment around that. That's my issue, and some anger.
Okay.
And before we move forward, I would like to do some of my own work around that and just invite you to hold the space for me.
Okay, before we go forward, I'd like to invite you to hold the space for what?
Just the space for me to do that healing work.
For me to do that healing work. Okay. So what does the person basically do? They just, they're just hoping that you heal, basically, right? What is holding the space?
When I'm like, as we're working right now,
yeah.
What I'm focused on is being connected in my heart to love.
Yeah.
And literally, though you're, 2,000 miles away, literally extending the energy of support and love to you as we're going through this process.
Okay.
And if in the interaction something comes up in me that inhibits me from holding that space, then the first order of business, rather than me downing you because look what you did to me, is, I've got some stuff coming up. I need to do some healing to get to the next level of us being able to process.
Uh-huh.
Thanks for showing that to me, Dayu, and I'm going to work through that. I'm going to let go of whatever that is. I'm going to do some forgiveness work around that and let go of it. And so as we start as human beings to interact this way on planet Earth, that we each take responsibility and clean up what comes up in us, rather than something came up in me, you made me angry, and then my whole conversation is about you. Again, go to the communication DVD, watch that, and we demonstrate how if you have some sort of turmoil or pain, the first thing you want to do is communicate about your turmoil or pain with yourself or someone else and clean that up, rather than blame it on somebody else and then have a conversation about them. That's what most of the world is doing. And so that would be the shift. And so maybe watch that DVD and do some writing about it, do some worksheets, and maybe tomorrow or the next day give us a shout and let us know what the result is.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Michael. And
thank you for your call, and we appreciate you and love sharing the planet with you. And we've got another caller online. Let me hand the phone to Jeannie.
Actually, it's not another call, but Sam asks a question and says, Michael, what would you do? Wait a minute, it just jumped on me. Hold on. What would you do? What would you tell someone who has the belief that they must hold on to their fear in order to protect themselves and are constantly holding themselves on guard of everything in their life? And then we've got another comment, too, but let's address this one first.
Well, one of the favorite places I go with that one is one of the early texts in the Scriptures is the book of Job. And Job informs us in a very powerful way how the universe works. Because after everything that he goes through, what he comes up with is, oh my God, that which I feared most has come upon me. Fear is an amplifier that sets up a field that will resonate to you and draw to you precisely the thing you have fear about. If there is only one person on planet Earth that can play out your particular fear, guess who's coming to dinner? And what you want to do is remove or forgive that fear. The forgiveness would not be applied to the person or situation you have fear about. It would not be applied to yourself. It would be applied to that fear to remove from yourself that fear, because fear guarantees that whatever it is you have fear about is the energy that you are resonating into your life. And so you want to shift that fear faculty in its opposite direction. Its polar opposite is faith. I know that I'm a human being, a creator, made in the image and likeness of love, and only love comes to me. And there is a power in me that assures me of that. In the ancient Aramaic, that power was called Ruka Dekudsha. The words have been translated by the Greeks as the Holy Spirit. There's nothing in that passage that speaks about a disembodied spirit being. What it speaks of is an actual elemental force that resides in us that literally, when we invite it into activity, undoes the effects of our errors and teaches us the truth. And there's a really awesome passage from the Course in Miracles that tells you what will happen if you tap into that elemental force and you let that elemental force support you. And here's what it says. In essence, that the energy system of life has a plan for you. And the plan is for your highest good. And so what that passage in the Course in Miracles says is, once you have accepted her plan as the one function that you would fulfill, there will be nothing else that Ruka Dakucha, that higher power, will not arrange for you. Without your efforts, she will go before you, making straight your path and leaving in your way no stones to trip on, no obstacles to bar your way. Nothing you need will be denied you, not one seeming difficulty, but will melt away before you reach it. You need take thought for nothing, careless of everything, except the one purpose that you would fulfill. And its fulfillment is guaranteed because it rests on you, a creation of God. So once you recognize that you can live in fear, you can kind of separate yourself off from the whole game, or at least appear to separate yourself off from it. You know, I had the privilege back several decades ago of getting to work with a gentleman named Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM. Marcel had a camera in his laboratory with which to take a picture of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think thought. It was a camera that did not attune to light frequency, but was tunable to other levels of frequency. And he could literally get pictures of these energy waves that would radiate from people. And through those energy waves, we communicate to all of life exactly what we expect. And we have a contract with the Creator, and the Creator says, if you ask me for it, I will give it to you. Ask and receive. It will show up in your life. And when it shows up in your life, if you're in codependency, you'll blame it for showing up, and you'll go, look at me, an innocent victim. If you're in interdependence, you'll go, wow, when this showed up, it really brought a lot of pain and turmoil up in me. Oh, my goodness, here I am. I'm a creator. I created this again. I've been through this 87 different times with 42 different people. I'm the only one that was there every time. This is about me. I'm going to go in and forgive this frequency in me with which I attracted this result. And when I remove it, all of a sudden, guess what happens? The result goes away. Things shift. Things change. So shifting the fear faculty by forgiving fear into the faith faculty gives you a whole different literal energy system with which to set up and to create your life. And if you go back into the Aramaic, the first law was the maintenance of the active presence of love. Fear, you know, people say, well, if I didn't have fear, I'd put my hand on the burner and burn my fingers. It's like, excuse me, I have intelligence. That burner's hot. I'm not going to put my fingers on it. Well, but if I didn't have fear, I would go near the cliff and fall over. Excuse me, you don't have to have fear in order to stay away from the cliff. You go, 2,000 feet down, I'm going to stay back from the edge. It doesn't take any fear to do that. It's not required. What is required is that you live as the being you were designed to live, and that you know that you have a power that goes before you that supports you. If you don't know that, crazy stuff happens. When you do know that, some pretty awesome things happen. And I think Jean's got another caller, another comment.
Yeah, but we've only got a minute, so I'm not sure we have time to address it. But it's kind of along the same lines. Someone had. Okay, let's do that. Let's start tomorrow's show with it. So, Mountain Diva, we will start with your comments tomorrow's show. So tune in with us.
Cool. Well, gee, here we're down to it. We've got 1 minute left. Mark your calendar. Next Wednesday, Dr. Stephen Androsky and I will be co-hosting the show. We're going to talk about the individual's responsibility in their health challenges and how to approach your medical doctor in a way to enlist them in support of your healing. So that'll be our show next Wednesday. If you're in Pahrump, Nevada, or around this area tomorrow or tonight, we'll be doing the workshop Codependence to Interdependence, the one we've been working on the last several days. We just set up, and on the 22nd and 23rd of May, a Saturday and a Sunday, we're going to do a 2-day intensive here at Tacoma Hot Springs here in California, which is about an hour and a half outside of Las Vegas. It'll be a residential workshop, awesome fresh and raw food made by Chef Claudia. We'll be doing the workshops. Communication, did you hear what I think I said? Why is this happening to me again? Empowered to heal, the Aramaic Beatitudes. MindShifters and Still Point Breathing. So if you're ready to do some intensive work, come on out to Las Vegas and join us. 786, pardon me. If you could, our show is complete. We're just winding down. Call us tomorrow. You could be the opening caller. We'd love to chat with you. And we hold the space that you are about to have the best year yet of your eternal life. And we'll look forward to hearing from you tomorrow. Please bring a stranger with you tomorrow. Invite somebody to come and be on the show. Share these tools. Expand your community. It will expand your support. Blessings.